One of the great Eagles in the last 30 or 40 years, Brian Westbrook, the former running back in Philadelphia, now of NBC-SN and also CSN Philadelphia. Brian, I'm kind of looking at this, firing at Chip Kelly, like Chip had three components to his game there. You have Coach Kelly, the head coach. You have Chip Kelly, the general manager, and Chip Kelly, the person. Which part of that makeup do you think got him fired?
It's tough, Paul, to kind of separate all those people. But I think, truthfully, when you look at everything for Jeffrey Lurie and the Eagles organization, it was a combination of all three. Chip Kelly, the person, he wasn't well liked around the organization, around that building. A lot of the players had problems with Chip Kelly, the person, and so that's a bad seed. But truthfully, people that are not like Bill Belichick, he's not loved all around that facility, and not every player up there loves him, but he finds a way to win, so that's okay. So that's acceptable for not having everybody liking you. I think Chip Kelly, the coach, and you're talking about doing different schemes, not helping players getting better, and that's a big thing. And Ross knows you have to be able to cultivate your players. You have to be able to make those guys better from the player that came into your system. And I don't think we've seen that from Chip Kelly as the coach. And with that, that's a losing situation right there. That equals losses on the football field. And then you look at Chip Kelly, the GM, and this probably was the biggest strike, I think. When you get rid of talented guys, Pro Bowl guys like Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin, LaShawn McCoy, Evan Mack. I mean, these are guys that helped you win games, even with basic schemes offensively as a coach, even with missed assignments. These guys were able to take messed up plays and turn them into good plays, and you got rid of those guys. And, a lot of people don't have a problem with you getting rid of those guys if you bring someone in better. But that's where Chip Kelly didn't. He failed himself. He didn't bring someone in better than the guy that he got rid of. And when you add all those things up, it equals to an owner that is upset, an owner that was embarrassed on national TV several times just this year. And now he's looking at a team where he's given so much control to a coach that he doesn't have confidence that can build a team around that control in a losing situation. And so now he says, listen, Chip, you have to go.
Brian, I know all of you guys loved Andy Reid so much, which is truly unique. How much do you think Chip was hurt just by the fact that he came in, so many of those guys loved Andy, and he's kind of the anti-Andy in terms of personality?
Well, I don't know that it hurt Chip. I think he wants to be loved, and I think he wants to be a people person. It's just not his personality. And so the truth is, Ross, and if you want to be a certain way and you want to be accepted by your peers and by the guys on your team, you have to be able to speak to them. You have to be able to go to them in the good times and in the bad times and be able to have a conversation and things like that. And many of the players that I've talked to have said, I don't even have a relationship with Chip. I see him on game day, I see him at practice, but other than that, we've never had a complete conversation as a player and a coach. And those little conversations, they're so helpful. And not so much when you're winning, but when you're losing, you need to have those relationships with your players because at that point, you need to be able to motivate these guys. You need to be able to take them from a place where they're down and out because you're losing football games and be able to motivate them and able to enable them to be able to win football games. And I don't think Chip Kelly was able to do that because he didn't have that relationship with the guys. A few weeks ago up in New England, Jeffrey Lurie came down to the locker room and motivated the team by giving them a pep speech before the game. To me, that was a big signal that maybe the owner, who's not in the locker room every day, but he understood and recognized that the coach was not getting the job done as far as motivating the players, and therefore he had to come down there and do it. I think that was a big part, a big sign of Chip's undoing there in Philadelphia.
Hey, Brian, when we talked to Jason La Canfora a moment ago, one of the things he mentioned was from his sources that it just didn't feel good to walk into that building. You've been in that building a bunch, not as much as when you were playing, obviously, but if you could, compare what that building felt like as a workplace under Andy Reid to what you felt under Chip Kelly.
Well, Paul, that's a great statement, and I think you're absolutely right. When you walked in that building with Andy Reid, everybody there loved Andy Reid. I mean, he was just a big, jolly guy. He was nice to everyone. And listen, he wasn't like, going out of his way to do things, but he understood how important it was to just have small conversations with people. He understood how important it was for please and say thank you and things like that. And those things go a long way inside of a building. Chip Kelly didn't seem to care about those types of things. And so when you walked in that building with Chip Kelly, you hear a lot of whispering, like, I don't like him, and he did this today. And I'm talking about from the janitors, the cafeteria workers, to the equipment staff, to some of the coaches, to a lot of the players. A lot of those people just didn't feel comfortable with Chip Kelly as their coach and GM, whoever is making the decisions. And I think that played a part in it as well. When you talk about Jeffrey Lurie sitting next to DeMarco Murray, a guy that they paid an awful lot of money to come here, I have to believe that conversation on that plane it wasn't all about just the playing time. I think it had to be about how the players and what they thought and felt about Chip Kelly. I think Jeffrey Lurie was curious about that, and I think he actually sought out DeMarco Murray just to have that type of conversation.
Brian, you watch every game this team plays. You basically cover them. You know, the first couple of years, they set franchise record for scoring. Some of the holes that the running backs had, especially the first couple of years. What are your thoughts on Chip's system moving forward in the NFL and another team potentially hiring him?
Well, listen, Ross, when you have a system that has guys that are talented, they have Deshaun Jackson, who could take the top off the defense, who is a playmaker no matter where he plays at, even down in Washington. Jeremy Maclin is turning and becoming even a better playmaker out there in Kansas City with Andy Reid. He was also here. LaShawn McCoy, we know what Shady's able to do, especially in this offense. 1,600 yards the first year, 1,300 yards the second year. When you have those types of players on your offense, any scheme that you draw up, you can draw a play up in the ground, in the dirt, and that's going to work because those guys have the ability to turn something bad into something good. Chip Kelly decided to get rid of those guys and replace them with average players. And because his schemes are so simple, it's easy for defenses to figure it out. And then the players he had, they weren't able to turn a bad play into a good play. And so that's the difference there. I think Chip Kelly's scheme still could work, but he's going to need good players. He's going to need Pro Bowl talented, Pro Bowl level players to be in this scheme for this scheme to work in the NFL.
Hey, Brian, we really appreciate your thoughts. That's good stuff. It's great insight from a guy who has relationships inside the building now and knows what it's like to be a Philadelphia Eagle in recent seasons. So, Brian, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Take care.